Welcome to the Prevail Over Cancer Podcast, where we take a metabolic approach to help guide you on preventing, prevailing, and striving over cancer.
We are live on the Prevail Over Cancer Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Jeff Lopes, my incredible co-host, Keith Bishop. How are you, Keith?
I'm doing great. And you?
I'm doing amazing. Excited, like always, adding tons of information, providing tons of insight to help other people going through their cancer journey or people to help prevent and prevail before they even get cancer. I'm so excited to have on today another guest, or second guest. So you're only our second guest. We're on episode 31, and it's Michelle Patidar. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me.
This is, like all weeks, we're trying to add inspirational stories and people that have turned a negative impact on their life to something so incredibly positive and helping others. And that's what Michelle is doing. So I love diving right into it. Michelle, let's just start off at the beginning. How did you find out you had cancer? And just tell us your story, and let's dive right into it.
Sure. So I found out I had cancer at 32 years old, but a big piece of my story began about a year and a half prior to my diagnosis. I was newly married, 3 months in, and I found out that my mom was given 6 weeks to live, and she had a stage 4 stomach cancer. So coming from a family that we didn't really have any disease or illness growing up, we didn't really know what to do. It was an enormous shock, right? So my husband and I ended up moving my mom in to live with us, and we became her primary caregivers. My parents are divorced, and she was by herself. So obviously we're taking her in, and we're taking care of her. And, and this is a common theme that I find even amongst my clients too. Stress is such a key piece in my story. So as I became a primary caregiver at 30 years old, I really didn't know what I was doing. And I went from being a daughter to a parent in the matter of a split second. My entire reality completely changed. And when they say, she has 6 weeks to live, you realize how dire the situation is. She opted not to go for any conventional medicine, so chemo or radiation. And her primary cancer was in her stomach. But they found out very quickly that it spread to her spinal fluid, which means it spread to her brain. So as the primary caregiver, I'm living, with my mom, seeing her suffer, but I'm also taking care of her, and I am responsible for her health, and I'm working full time at the same time as well. So when cancer spreads to your brain, all of these funky things can happen, right? She would have seizures and eventually lost her hearing, and eventually the cancer then spread to her bones, and she was wheelchair bound. And my husband and I were making these very important decisions every single day. I was in complete, fight or flight mode, just as wanting to take as best care of her as possible. She was basically surviving off blood transfusions. Every 3 days we were at Rush Hospital getting a blood transfusion, which usually ended up meaning we were in the ICU, and they couldn't get blood to her a few times quick enough, and she ended up flatlining. I had to make calls to, family members numerous times, like, I think this is it. We're at the end. She always bounced back. Miraculously, she ended up living 6 months versus the 6 weeks. But it was a very hard reality to see someone suffer to that degree. And it was my first experience with cancer and with really any illness. And it was horrible. It was so incredibly stressful. And, although she was under my care and I'm making these decisions, I have her oncologist on my text messages every day. I really felt disconnected to her as well, because I didn't understand her mindset. She was someone that was very much in denial with her cancer too. So it made it difficult sometimes to make those decisions and to really navigate the entire cancer process. So I normally start off when people ask me about my journey, just say, I was a caregiver. My mom, lasted 6 months. But I think it's important to really understand when you're a caregiver, the amount of stress and suffering it is on the people taking care of, but also just on the relationship that you have with the person that is passing away, and how stressful and enormous that can be, right? So after she passed, my husband and I were like, all right, we're gonna move forward, and we're gonna try to have a baby. Probably the worst decision at that time, but we're like, we're gonna try and have a baby. We're gonna move forward, But I realized very quickly that I was very stuck in trauma. I didn't really have the opportunity to grieve my mom. I didn't have the opportunity to grieve her diagnosis, because it was like, shoot, you have 6 weeks to live, but you have to take care of her, and this is what's going on. So it was on. I had to be on every single day and be very aware, one ear to the door all the time. So I didn't get the opportunity to really process and grieve everything that was occurring within that 6 months. So I felt very stuck in trauma. I didn't know what to do. And I thought, I really should go to a therapist and talk to somebody to really give myself some relief, because I don't know what to do. And so I did. I went and sought out a grief therapist who happened to be a cancer survivor herself. Funny how those little miracles come full circle, because, my diagnosis came shortly after. And she really started to help me work through some of the grief. And what I didn't realize was how much trauma that I experienced within those 6 months, and how I felt very trapped in my body. So I felt like I was really stuck and had a little bit of PTSD with just everything that I saw and I experienced. So I started to work through that with her. And then I started having some really odd symptoms. I thought, this is so weird. And me and my husband could not get pregnant. They tried to do fertility drugs, everything. It wasn't working. So one of my doctors was like, let's do an MRI. Let's make sure everything is okay. So I did, and they found a pituitary tumor in the base of my brain. It ended up being benign, but it was very big. It was causing me not to get pregnant. And it was also causing this very weird disease in my body where I had all these crazy symptoms. So I ended up flying to Boston and getting the tumor removed within a week of even finding out that I had the tumor. And they confirmed it was benign. Everything came back okay. And I thought, okay, like, this is it. This has to be it. Like, I can't take too much more. This was 6 months after my mom passed. So, I felt like I was kind of running on fumes and just feeling very stressed out physically, mentally, and emotionally. And again, my husband and I tried to get pregnant, and it wasn't happening. And I remember really using meditation as a tool throughout this process, and really getting quiet with myself. And if you're ever trying to have a baby, or you're in a fertility struggle, it is so hard, and mentally and emotionally. And I remember kind of thinking, like, in a meditation, I'm just going to surrender. And I remember just thinking, I'm going to surrender, and whatever is supposed to happen in my next chapter, I'm open to it, and I'm here for it, and I accept it. And it was about 1 year after my mom passed, and I was getting ready to go back for her memorial, and I had this dream about her. And in my dream, I was getting out of the shower. We were kind of chit-chatting. We were talking about the Kardashians and just, BSing a little bit. And I was brushing my hair after the shower, and all my hair started falling out. And in my dream, I was like, oh my gosh, and I just started freaking out. And my mom started to lead me down this path. And I remember just saying, no, I can't, no, no, no. And I was very clenched up and tight like this. I woke up from my dream, and I was like, just completely tense, my entire body. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, what a weird dream. That's so odd. And it felt like, when you tense up, you can kind of jerk sometimes and pull a muscle in your neck. I was like, oh man, I think I really slept on that wrong from that dream. I pulled a muscle. And I didn't think anything of it because I was 31 and working out 5 days a week and eating as healthy as possible, or so I thought. I'm a young girl. Like, this couldn't be really anything. Within a day, the pain was getting so bad. I was debilitated, and I thought I might have to go to the emergency room. And I remember, talking to my dad, and we were taking a walk, and I was telling him about this pain. And I'm like, I just have this horrible feeling. I'm like, I just have this horrible gut feeling like something's off. He's like, no, you've just been through so much in the last year. It's trauma. Like, it's okay. Like, you have to accept that good things are going to happen and that the bad is over. And I'm like, I said, I really believe things happen in threes, and I just have this feeling. And I went into my PCP, my primary care doctor's office, and I actually made a joke. And I said, I just want to be sure I don't have cancer or anything. Ha ha ha. Because she knew my mom, passed and all of that. And she said, no problem. And they did blood work. She said, it's probably just a pulled muscle. You're doing HIIT workouts. You had a weird dream, but don't worry about it. Get a massage, take a muscle relaxer. It's going to be fine. Well, I got a massage and, a few days later, my blood work came back and she called me and she said, it's kind of weird, but your D-dimer levels are slightly elevated and that is connected to blood clots. And she's like, you can't be walking around with a blood clot. She's like, it's not very elevated, but it's slightly elevated to a point where, it shouldn't be. So come back in and we're going to do an x-ray. And I said, okay, fine. And in my head, I'm like, I've been through a lot. My body's probably just adjusting, like no big deal, right? So I go and I get an x-ray and I leave. It was a Saturday morning, actually. Me and my husband went, we had brunch, had mimosas. We're like, all right, everything's great. Let's move forward. And we were pulling into my garage and Northwestern called. And I was like, oh, that's weird. It's Saturday and like 2 p.m. Like, this is weird. And I answered the phone and they said, I hate to tell you this, but we found a 10 centimeter by 10 centimeter mass in your chest leaning against your heart. And you have to get this biopsied and it's alarming. And my entire world just stopped, crashed down. And I remember just completely breaking down. I actually called my therapist because I just didn't know what else to do. And I was just like, if this is cancer, like I can't, and my only experience with cancer was my mom. So all of these flashbacks and these horrible experiences of seeing her and everything she went through really flashed through my mind. And I thought, this is going to be my reality now. Like, this is a sick joke. This is a sick joke is kind of what my mindset was. And of course I had to wait and get the biopsy done, waited 2 weeks for that. And they called me in and they told me that I had cancer. They didn't know what kind of cancer and further testing needed to be done. And they passed me on to an oncologist at that point. And I had then been diagnosed with a non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. It ended up being stage 2. It did not spread past stage 2. So I feel very grateful for that. And, my oncologist at the time, she was my North Star in it all. She sat down with me for like 2.5 hours on a Friday night and said, listen, you have to get admitted into the hospital right away. You might have a blood clot. This tumor is enormous. And like, these are your options. So I will say as wonderful as my oncologist was, I don't feel like at that time there was any other option than chemotherapy and the conventional route. And it was kind of happening so fast and quickly that it didn't feel like it even was allowed, and I hate to say that, but allowed time to stop and say, what the hell's going on?
Yeah.
What do I have other options? Where do I go to next or anything like that? And my mom was very much like a holistic person. So she did not do the conventional route. And I thought, I don't know what to do. And my oncologist said, you're young. This is going to be a very traditional chemotherapy route for you. It's going to be very hard on the body, but you're young, you can do this. And she's like, and if you respond well to the chemo, then you'll be able to make it through. And you have to just focus on that. She's like, my goal is to get you to your babies. She's like, that's what I want you to focus on as you start this process. And so I was admitted in the hospital and they actually found out that I had 4 blood clots in my left arm that were circulating. And I went through the MRIs, the bone marrow biopsies, everything else came back negative, thankfully. But I was also traveling. I just got back from a girls' trip from New Orleans. I'm on planes, I'm drinking, I'm having fun, and I have 4 blood clots and trauma and stress. And I just didn't realize how fast kind of everything was catching up. And that diagnosis really, really turned everything around.
You were blessed to have that D-dimer test, because that's not a common test.
Well, I'm blessed to have the dream because I didn't have any symptoms without that dream for sure. And yes, that she did like a full blood panel and the D-dimer was on the blood panel. I don't know if that's standard or
No,
not.
it's
No, it's not at all.
No.
Yeah. I do feel very lucky. I feel like the care team I had at Northwestern was phenomenal and very proactive in regards to, what they do and how they handle the diagnosis. So, if that is not a standard blood test, then I feel incredibly lucky to have caught that because I was very much non-symptomatic with my cancer diagnosis, except for that pain after that dream.
Mm-hmm.
Which is very common with most people, right? The symptoms are very low, if anything. And there's one thing that you're talking about, I'm going to just dive into, Michelle, is a lot of individuals. I just got off the phone this morning. A local person, a friend of ours through my other business, reached out to me to speak to one of their clients that just got diagnosed. And it was a very similar situation where they find out and it's like everything happens so quickly. And it happened with me, but I was different maybe because I've been an entrepreneur for 29 years. I have a different approach of how I deal with everything. I take everything and I break down everything, and I try to do is control the controllables. But a lot of individuals, when you're put in that situation where you're everything's happening so quickly, and and in your mind is like, I got to trust this person. I have no other choice. I think it's a lesson learned for everybody is take a deep breath and just get different opinions, different ideas, this is why our podcast is so important. This is why individuals like yourself, Michelle, and Keith are so important. There are so many people out there, social media wise, that you could just reach out, shoot a DM to, and ask a question. Don't be scared. I'm getting 2-3 calls. I'm not an expert. I know my protocol. I know what I do. I'm obsessive compulsive. I haven't had drop the processed food or a drop of sugar. I haven't missed a sauna. I haven't missed a fasting in 2 years. But I know my routine, but there is so many people out there that feel lost. They're scared. They feel alone, even if they have a family, because a lot of family have that pressure of, hey, listen to the doctor. So I think it's very important for people just to learn and take a deep breath and just realize you have time to take a deep breath, ask questions, learn as much as you can. I'm not saying don't go that route. Maybe that is the best route for you.
Yeah.
It wasn't for me. I decided not to go to the chemotherapy route, but if it is the best route for you, there's no issues with that. It's having somebody like yourself or Keith next to you through that process that'll make that process so much easier.
I agree. And there's so many different modalities now, right? And the reality is, and I think at least from my perspective, like I was so fear-based because I just saw what happened to my mom. So, and that was so fresh that I was like, I was coming from a place of total fear. I do not want to die. I'm terrified. And listen, and of course, like you said, your support system, you do exactly, your doctor said, if you respond well, this is going to work, right? And when you're so scared, you cling to those words so much because you just want to hear, you're going to be okay. We'll figure this out. We'll fix it, And I think that to anybody that's newly diagnosed, and I know if it happened to me all over again at my age and my experience now, it would be very, very different. And it's also, so much has been developed. There's so many different modalities that have come to light in the last 7 years from when I had cancer to now that are becoming a little bit more mainstream, right? In how to handle. And it's great. It's a great time to get information when you pause. And it's also a very big reality that people are getting diagnosed younger and younger. Yeah. And I feel like when you are so young, you are so naive to what is out there. And you only know, you kind of like tunnel vision, right? You don't have as open mind as when you go through life experiences and you get older and you can, adapt to different situations. So when people are getting diagnosed younger and younger, you go into that fight or freeze state where it's like you don't think that there's any other option. And so to echo what you're saying, Jeff, that that pause can be so important, right? In giving yourself a minute to really understand what's important to you, what healthcare looks like for you, what your end goal is, and finding the right people to surround yourself with. And that might be conventional, that might be not, that might mean both, right? Yeah. I get hundreds of messages on social media all the time. Like, I was just diagnosed and what should I do, or blah, blah, blah. And I refer people out to different functional medicine oncologists and stuff, and I always say, you have to do what's best for you and what you feel in your heart and your gut, whatever that is. Like, cancel out the family, cancel out the friends. Don't get the personal opinions from your circle, you get quiet and really listen to your gut and try to navigate that way.
What you said there, just two things I want to jump on there. Right now, what you said, and I think is so important, is if you are recently diagnosed, is find an inner circle and stick to that inner circle. When I got diagnosed, November 23rd, 2022, till the day I had surgery, February 16th, that 3-month period, I literally only had maybe 8, 9, 10 people in my life that had to know I had cancer, because I didn't want all that noise around you. I didn't want all those opinions. You need to focus. So try to focus on eliminating as much noise from outside as possible. I think that's so important. And another thing that you had said, and I think is so important, is when you sit with an oncologist, a lot of them, I mean, we all are, there are oncologists now learning and becoming more adapted to modern medicine or more natural path medicine, but majority of them are still by the book. They're science. It's by the book. It's what they're taught. They have a week, 2 weeks of nutrition in school, and the rest is all about medicine based. So they're going to throw stats at you and say, if you do this drug, you have an extra 5-7% to live. If you do this drug, and they start throwing stats at you. But one thing people have to understand with stats is how many of those people that don't do the drug and die have made the necessary changes to deal with the root cause, to change their life, to change their lifestyle, to start exercising, start eating better, start taking supplements, surrounding themselves, removing stress in their life, checking their environment. These people are not making those changes. So don't look at every stat and understand that every stat is so different, because it's all individually is what that person has done to make the changes to survive. So I think that's so important. Do you want to jump in there, Keith?
Yeah. So what's your thoughts on where to get information, about what to do, whether it be lifestyle or supplements, alternative treatments? I can't help but think many times I have clients that contact me and existing clients, and then they're on this social media group, and I mean, all kinds of stuff is going out there, and they're getting confused. But where do you get your information?
So, and I love information. I'm such an information person. And, it's tricky with social media too, because there's so much information flying at you, and it's hard to sift through and decipher what to take and what to leave and this and that. Right. I go to experts. So for me, like functional medicine speaks to my heart. That is what I believe, how the body and the mind operate. We are one as a whole, and that is how the body works. So functional medicine to me is kind of like the holy grail. So functional oncologists that really specialize in root causes, right?
Yeah.
For me, and these are like key things, right? I look to hear about root causes, lifestyle, not just food, not just nutrition and walking and exercising, but also people who are addressing the mind, the trauma, emotional things, how we deal with stress. Like the mental and emotional piece is just as important as the nutrition and the exercise piece. So people who are really focusing in on the entire whole body and whole health, but then also understanding the root cause and how to address each of those issues and kind of throwing a lot of different modalities at it, because I don't think it's a one size fits all. And we're all so bio-individual. We've all had past experiences or which affect our cells and our epigenetics. All of this is so incredibly important. So finding someone that's going to sit down and say, I want to know what's happened to you from the minute you were born to present day, to really be able to assess a good specialized plan for you. So someone that's like just throwing supplements at you, not going to trust you. Someone that's just talking about the food, yeah, that's great, but it's just so much more than those two things. So those are the things that I look for. And there's a couple of, I try to find local, like people in different areas. So because when people ask me questions, I would love to refer them to people who I think are specialists or experts, so they get the correct help, right? In the answers that they're looking for. So really like looking for people like that who are spreading that kind of information and We're still really fact-based with how these modalities help, right? Why certain IVs help, why certain high dose supplements work, and how it attacks what you specifically have. But it's just so specific to the person. So that's what I would look for.
Yeah, I think that's amazing because every individual is going to obviously have different processes in place that are going to work for themselves, and it is a testing space. I mean, I've used myself as a guinea pig. I've done the whole IVs, vitamin C's. I've done anything in my mind that would give me a 0.11% chance of survivability and to be here till I'm 90. I'm going to do it. And I've done it and I've tested and I've seen how it is through blood work. And Keith knows I'll do supplements and I'll test my blood and I'll test different things and I'll see how my body reacts to them and how I'm feeling, how our energy, how my sleep patterns. It's a whole holistic approach from sleeping. There's so much involved. And it's hard for some individuals to go that route and go that extreme. There are people like myself that they'll dive right in. It's like, it is what it is. I'm doing this, but it's that baby steps too, right? The domino effect. It might just be one little thing at a time and grow. I want to dive into something myself and Keith have talked to. We've actually talked to last episode as well about is the connection. And there's a lot more studies on this, Michelle, with the connection of a high stress moment in your life. And this is something we talked about to the root cause of the cancer. My father passed away about less than 18 months before I found out. And he was my best friend. I was 43 years old. I was the 43-year-old married with 2 kids, but I would talk to my dad 3-4 times a day. Like I would literally not go to bed. I would not go to bed without having a conversation with my father. When I wake up on the drive to work every morning, I would talk to my dad. And I talked to him. It was May 6th, Thursday night. Had a great conversation with him. Say goodnight. Got a call at 6 a.m. Friday, May 7th. He woke up, went to the bathroom, looked at my mom, passed out, instant heart attack, died on the spot. So I never got to say bye. That affected me. The first 90-something days, I was at the cemetery every single day. He was obsessed with crossword puzzles. The last crossword book I bought him, I took it to the cemetery. I would sit there and do 10, 15 pages of crossword puzzles just to be with him. And I did that for 90-something days straight, every day at the cemetery. And I do believe there's a connection to that with my diagnosis 18 months later. Was there already something brewing? Who knows? But I do believe that had an issue with it. And then you add stress. When you're stressed, you're going to eat not as great. Even though I still worked out 5 days a week, I thought I was healthy. I took care of myself, but still, I'm sure there's a huge connection. And more you talk to individuals now, and you look at their cancer diagnosis, most of them do have an impact within 18 months period prior, that whether it's a divorce, loss of a job, loss of a loved one, that has an impact. So let's talk a little bit about that with your mindset with that.
No, I agree with you 100%. And it's hard because there's not a ton of research and fact-based around this. But I'll tell you this, I work with cancer survivors and help them recover after treatments. And 8 out of 10 people that I work with have had something stressful happen within 2 to 4 years of their diagnosis. It is this uncanny theme that I started to realize after starting working. I'm like, this is crazy. Everyone is kind of having a really big stressful event and then a cancer diagnosis. And, at least I know for me, in my experience, I 100% know that the stress of taking care of my mom, the grief of my mom, and being in that fight or flight for so long really affected my body. We know that stress has an impact on our cortisol levels, and which affects all of our hormones and everything like that. So, and we know that stress is, a common denominator in most chronic diseases out there too, right? But there's something about the traumatic experience that I think is so connected to cancer. And at least for me, I didn't have at 30 years old, 31 years old, these stress management tools that I was using to navigate when I'm, taking care of my mom and dealing with my own cancer. I wasn't doing that. I wasn't doing that. I ended up doing it through cancer treatments and after cancer treatments that helped pull me out of it. But a lot of people, I think, don't have those tools to use when they're in these stressful times, or you just can't almost get out of your own head to be able to do it because you're stuck in it. You're stuck in grief. You're stuck in that sadness. And as you know, Jeff, and I'm so sorry about your father. It's so terrible. You get in this mode of just surviving, and you get comfortable in your grief sometimes, and it makes you feel very stuck. And I know, at least for me, I was so stuck in fight or flight with my mom. And then I was diagnosed. And all through my diagnosis, my mindset was get through every round. My therapist was like, you're like an athlete. Your goal was to ring that bell, get through every round, and that is also fight or flight. You don't have time to slow down and to process. And this happens with a lot of people. They go through a stressful event, they go through some sort of conventional treatment, and then I see them. And then I'm like, wow, you're still in survival mode. And part of what I do is help people come out of survival mode and come into recovery mode, because you can't heal in that survival mindset, because our mindset is so incredibly important when it comes to healing and recovering and prevention, right? You can't heal when you're so stuck in it. So I agree with you 100%. Stress, I think, is such a huge common denominator. I think it's so bizarre. People are all, even my mom, 2 years before her diagnosis, because stomach cancer, I was tested. I don't have any cancer genes. Okay. Yeah. So, and non-Hodgkin's is known for being more environmental. Stomach cancer is known for being environmental. I do know she had like H. pylori, which I don't think fully healed at one point, but she underwent the most stressful event of her entire life 2 years prior to her diagnosis. And she kept it to herself and didn't tell anybody in her family, and held on to that for 2 years. The most stressful thing that could ever happen to her, she held on. And a lot of people, when you hold on to stress and trauma, it can manifest in our gut, right? Yeah. It's like before you give a speech or something, sometimes you get like tummy troubles or this, like the gut and the brain connection is so strong. So we can hold things in and it can manifest in our gut too. So, I don't think of it as any kind of coincidence that my mom, myself, you, and so many people that I worked with are all having these common experiences.
So, Michelle, what type of symptoms or, how can a person know that they have this stress and trauma that they need to deal with? Because, being a guy, a lot of times it's like, I'm just going to power through this.
Yeah.
And guys are typically brought up differently than women. But how does a person know that they need to seek some help?
That's a really good question. And I think a lot of people don't know. And I think it's because we're so distracted and so busy. And I think in order to really know what you're feeling, you have to kind of get quiet and listen to your body and listen to yourself. And I feel like most people walking around are not doing that. They have kids, they have jobs and practices and this and that. And so it tends to escape us to think about, am I feeling really stressed? Is this normal stress? Or am I taking care of myself? So I think it's really hard for people to know what they're dealing with. But I will say this, if you're somebody that is not doing anything for stress management, if you're not exercising, if you're not outside, if you're not getting some grounding, if you're not deep breathing or meditating or doing something that's bringing joy into your life every single day, if you are not sleeping, these are all things that help take the stress off of our plate. So if you're not doing any of those, I would say stop and give yourself a minute and check in with yourself and think, gosh, where is that stress going? Is it just going back into my body? What am I dealing with my stress? Start asking yourself those harder questions. Am I doing those gratitude lists? If you don't have anything in place, then you probably know it's a wake-up call to say, I'm going to take 30 minutes a day for myself, whatever that means in whatever capacity. It's a really small step that could really be motivating for people to stack habits on top of that, right? Just take 1/2 hour for yourself every day and see how you feel. Give it 2 weeks. See how you feel. Do you feel less stressed? Do you feel exactly the same? That's kind of a good way to gauge where you're at, because, we all have different stress loads, right? Who doesn't? But the key is to mitigate that stress in some way and give yourself the opportunity to release it and feel, get a break from it, so to speak.
I love that you said that, Michelle, because I coached entrepreneurs for years and years. And one thing with somebody with a busy lifestyle, I would call it as my coaching, I would call it mini vacations. And I would say, take half an hour a day as a mini vacation for yourself, whether you're going for a walk, whether you're reading a book, find something you love to do. And half an hour a day, you'll lock it into your schedule. It's actually on your schedule, my mini vacation. And I would call it mini vacation. So I think that exactly is so important. That should be for everybody in life.
Yeah.
And one thing you said, Keith, about, and I want to talk about is you had said men. I think that also goes towards moms. I think a lot of moms and the individuals I talk to, their mind, they're the protector. As much as men think they're the protector, moms are the real protector. So as a mom, your mindset is to protect, and your children are always first. And you won't take that time for yourself. You won't take that moment for yourself. And sometimes it's always the children. That is one thing I think a lot of women, just like men, will be like, I'm okay. I think if moms are in the same scenario, is I'm okay. I could deal with this. I need to focus on my kids. So I think that's open to a lot of people, not just more men. I think a lot of, especially moms, will use that as well. One thing too, you said, there's so many things you're saying, Michelle, I want to dive into. And I apologize, all these questions. Intuition, we need to trust our intuition. My doctor said I had hemorrhoids. He told me to go home. I did all my blood work. I did a full panel blood. I did my urines. He said, everything's great. You're healthy as you could be for a 40 to 45-year-old. He goes, you got hemorrhoids, kid. Go home. And I went home and I looked at my wife, and Keith knows my story. And I was like, something's just not right. Intuition. And I went and I forced him to do a colonoscopy. He didn't want to do one. He says, in Canada, we only do them at 50. And I'm like, I'm 45. I want to do one. And I kept pushing. He booked one 3 months from now, and I got on the phone. Keith knows my story. I literally got on the phone. I called every place possible, and I went on every list, and I got one in 3 days. And I woke up to finding out I had stage 3 tumor in my rectum. So trust your intuition. Trust your intuition. And another thing too, is you had said about, you had just talked about, and I think this is a big misconception. I think that's why it's so important for individuals, yourself and Keith, is the medical system has this mindset of do the treatment, ring the bell, you're done. You're good to live the rest of your life. And Keith knows my story, and I put it on mine when I post. I didn't ring the bell. They told me to ring the bell, and I looked at the girl. I said, my journey's starting now, and I walked the hell out of there. And I didn't ring the bell when I did. I did. Now that I go back, I realistically wish I didn't do, but I did. I did my radiation. I didn't do the chemo. They wanted me to start after, and I stopped. But I did the radiation. They asked me to ring the bell, and I said, no, I'm not ringing the bell. Then my journey starts now. And I think a lot of people have to understand is if you do that treatment route, ringing the bell means absolutely nothing. The minute you finish that treatment is in meeting individuals like Michelle and Keith, or getting advice from myself that's been through it. That's when your journey starts. Now you got the rest of your life to actually really focus on taking care of yourself. So don't think as the medication is going to save you, because reality, the stats are there. Most people that do chemo in 5 years are dead because they don't do the necessary changes to their life. They don't find the root cause. They don't do, whether it's, I'm into grounding, everything you're saying, I do, right? Grounding, this, you have to take care of everything and focus on everything. Because if you want to be here for the long haul, you want to see your children walk down the aisle, you want to have those vacations, you want to retire. You need to focus. That moment you finish that treatment, even before the treatment, but the minute you focus that treatment, now you got the rest of your life to actually really focus on your health and all that stuff. And do you want to jump in there, Keith?
I think it's so important to do, all of those things. And I love what y'all are talking about taking that time and that break. And I have to admit, I need to do better, in that. And it's always go. After this recording, I've got another meeting, and then I've got another meeting. And so, but you have to schedule that. We have to schedule those times and be intentional, with that, and have to have that schedule and honor that. And know that there's going to be some flexibility needed, for that. But we do need to be doing that, the breathing and some type of a meditation and or a study of some kind that can get your mind off of these other stresses that we have to go through. So important. So yes, I've got that schedule today. I have to change it, and Jeff knows about that already. So I had to say, I'm sorry, I can only do part of this today, and because I've got some other marketing meetings I have to go to. And
it's okay to say no to people.
Yeah, yes, and and ask for forgiveness, and that's okay. And so, but we do have to schedule that and be intentional, with our lives. And so, Michelle, do you use a journal and gratitude? And I mean, do you write things down on a regular basis?
Yeah, I do. Well, I love that you said like be intentional, because that's the most powerful and important thing, it- and I love a mini vacation. I might start using it with my clients instead of just
I do
blocking out
too.
the half hour. A mini vacation, because it's something you look forward to every
Yeah.
day, right? But being intentional in the actions that you're doing it can change how your body reacts to it, right? It can change your perspective to it. So, being intentional with saying, and don't ask for forgiveness, Keith. If you say no to something, don't ask for forgiveness.
No.
Saying no to something means saying yes to yourself.
Yes.
And that's a switch that kind of needs to happen, because it's like, yes, I want to do all the things. Yes, it's exciting and it's fun and all of that, but it's also like, I know what I need at the end of the day. And if I continue on this route, then I'm going to snap at my kids later today, and I'm going to be stressed out, and then I'm not going to sleep good because I know I have to wake up and do A, B, and C, right? So having the intent of saying, I'm going to have to say no to this. I'm happy to pick it up next week. But it changes the perspective and makes being intentional a little bit easier. And trust me, I'm like a recovering perfectionist and like type A type of person. A lot of my clients are too. I can get so wrapped up in my routine and my schedule. But the cool part about it is kind of like, once you start scheduling good things into your routine and you're a routine oriented person, then it's just like second nature. And I like to think of it as like, I'm going to put my health on autopilot, right? I know every morning I'm going to wake up and have some hot water with ginger and lemon in it. I know I'm going to put a little bit of salt in it. I know I'm going to sit down and do my gratitude journal. I know that routine.
Yeah.
I'm putting my health on autopilot because the benefits are amazing for it, but it's like so ingrained in me now that it's like, I don't even have to think about it. It doesn't feel like another thing I have to do.
Yeah.
But to your question, yes, I do. So I journaled a lot after cancer, and then a couple of years even following cancer. It was a huge part of me processing through everything I went through. It also really helped me with my anxiety. I had a lot of anxiety after cancer and a lot of PTSD. So journaling was a really big piece for me. It helped me get it out of my body a little bit. It's one of those tools where I pick up when needed now. Now I focus a lot on deep breathing and meditation and gratitude journal every day. That helps switch your perspective, keeping you focusing on the right things that you want in your life and understanding what is in your life that you need to be grateful for. There's so many health benefits attached to doing the gratitude journal. It's something I implement in my coaching program as well. So yeah, I do have my own like modalities that I use, and also you have to walk the walk. If I'm talking it, I better be doing it, right? I better be practicing it. But it's also, there's nothing more important than my health. That is the foundation for everything. I'm a mom, I'm a wife, I have a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old. I'm busy, that alone is stressful, having a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old every morning is stressful sometimes. So knowing that I have these things planned throughout my day allows me to breathe. Exercising is a big piece of that, and getting that sunlight, going outside is just, and I use a good example with clients too. When we're in the Midwest, we're stuck inside all winter. We don't get to have as much grounding as I do during spring and summer. And whenever spring starts to hit and the seasons change and I get outside and I can start walking again outside and breathe the fresh air, oh my gosh, I see an immediate difference in my creativity levels, my anxiety levels, my stress levels. Everything comes down. My creativity shoots up. I'm like, on my phone, like jotting down notes for things that I want to do and workshops and this and that. And it's just amazing how that happens. So really finding out, I think, like what works for you too. Like all the things aren't going to work for everybody. I have clients who are like, I just can't get quiet. Like meditation is not going to be my thing. Please don't force me to do it. It's like, okay, so let's figure out what your thing is, because whatever we implement has to work. That's it. The whole point of this is to relieve stress, not to bring more stress in. So it's okay that you don't want to get quiet every day, or you can't, or it's just something that's not your thing. That's okay too. But figuring out other ways that helps people like adjust better and everything too. I'm not sure. I'm not sure how I got here in the conversation, but this is where I landed.
One thing, Michelle, and everybody that reaches out to me, and I don't do it as a business. I do it more just kind of giving back. And people that reach out to me and they start telling me their cancer scenario, their cancer journey, or what they just recently got diagnosed. And I tell everybody this, and it's something that I live by, and I practice what I preach, is you're looking at your cancer journey as an opportunity to now start living your life. Because a lot of people look at a cancer diagnosis as a death sentence, and you have to flip it around and look at it as an opportunity to live your life. Or in the last 2 years, and I've always done what I wanted to do, but in the last 2 years, I'm like, okay, let me focus on what I've always said I was going to do. Okay, I just bought a Porsche. I'm taking racing lessons. I'm going to start racing a car this summer. I'm doing all the things that I said I was going to do. And I still want to live till I'm 90, but I'm like, live life to the fullest and use this as an opportunity to live life to the fullest. Where's your mindset when you got diagnosed to where you are now mindset? Has it changed, or was it right off the bat like, I need to be here, there's a purpose for this all?
So that's a really great question. When I started, after my mom, my mindset was all over the place. And when I was diagnosed with cancer, my mindset was then completely changed. I thought, this is a sick joke. I kind of was like, why is this happening to me? Like that kind of mindset, right? But it was also like, everyone around me is having kids and thriving in their careers, and they're in their 30s, and they're in this completely different chapter. And I was very isolated and very alone. And something that I don't think is talked about a lot is that mindset during cancer, right? So I remember having a really hard time. I was admitted in the hospital, and they were like, we have to do an MRI to see if it's spread to your brain and other places, right? So you're going to be in here for a couple of days. We need you on blood thinners, blah, 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 right? And I remember thinking, gosh, this is so exhausting already. And I was in the hospital and so dehydrated from being in the hospital that they were trying to get the contrast line in my vein, and they couldn't get it because I was so dehydrated. And they were jabbing me like 5 times, and then trying to go through my foot, trying to go through here. They could not get the line in my vein. And I remember I was like, oh my God, like what's going on? I never been in the hospital in my life. So I was like, what's going on? This is crazy. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, Michelle, if you are going to go through this, you have to get tough, and you have to pull yourself out of this and understand this is just the beginning. Getting a needle for an MRI is going to be nothing when you have the road that you have ahead. And it was this internal talk that came over me that was like, you got to toughen up, and you got to get strong, and you got to power through this. And that shift happened. And then as I started, and I think that's what the shift was, getting through round to round, in it helped. And I also, because I'm crazy, was working full time in the hospital. So I had inpatient chemo. So I went through 6 rounds of inpatient chemotherapy. I was on 6 different drugs through an IV. So I was in the hospital for 5 days a week, every 2 weeks, a different chemo round. So I'd work from the hospital, take calls. I was like the director of training development at the time. So and nobody at work knew. Similar to you, Jeff, I didn't tell anybody I had cancer. It was my family and close friends. I had 27 people reporting into me. I was running training for an entire company. Like no one knew I had cancer. I was doing the wig thing, nothing. Like I'd go in the office once a week, but no one knew. So I'm like, I don't want the sympathy. I don't have any energy left to give anybody else. I don't want the sad looks. I don't want to be a victim. Yeah. Like it was just, that was my mindset. It was like, I got this. Plus I saw how much my family already went through with my mom. And so the people that did know would always give me the cancer look, like, and you have people looking at you in such a sad way. And it's like, no, don't look at me in a sad way. Like, I got this. You handle you, I'll handle me. And that was the mentality that really got me through cancer. And then also in turn, I mentioned earlier when I was talking about how I kind of felt really disconnected when my mom was dealing with her cancer journey. And I just didn't understand the decisions that she made or how she handled things. When I was going through my treatment, I then understood why she handled things the way she did and where her mindset was in her journey. And it was this really big moment for me where I was like, gosh, I really knocked her on how she handled things or just didn't understand. And it would make me angry.
Yeah.
And here I am doing the same thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, it was just a really big full circle moment. And when I got through treatments and rang the bell, and which I hate, and I didn't let anybody take pictures of me in the hospital. I did not want a picture of me leaving treatments or when I was done. I said, I don't ever want to talk about cancer for the rest of my life. This is it. I'm done. I just want to go back to normal life. Clearly, God had other plans, but that was the mindset, and then what kind of turned that mindset for me going into recovery was, to your point, Jeff, earlier too, you ring the bell and you think you're done. You think I'm walking away. I can go back to normal life. I'm good. And it's just the beginning of such a different chapter in life. Not only is there such a lapse in our medical system with offering support for cancer survivors, you break a bone, you go through OT, you go through PT, you know how to acclimate back into the world. You go through cancer, and all of a sudden, the team of like 7 people you had around you, poof, gone.
Yeah.
Bye. See you in 3 months. And it's like, gosh, well, my gut's not working. My body personally completely shut down. Could not absorb nutrients. I had such PTSD and anxiety and fatigue and brain fog. And I'm like, well, who do I talk to about this? No one's there. Then I would go see the oncology nutritionist, and she's like, well, you're eating everything right. You're doing everything right. I'm like, right, but the food is just sitting in my stomach. I can't absorb it. And I'm not gaining my energy, which means my nutrition isn't improving. So I see the disconnect, right?
Yeah.
No one else was seeing it around me. And also nobody wanted to touch me because I went through cancer and chemo. And I'm like, well, we don't know about that. So, just continue to eat the right things. You're doing it. It's just you need time. And I know we should all feel grateful because we're still here, but I'm like, this is not normal. I cannot live my life like this. And so I really had to take matters into my own hands and start figuring out gut health and how to nurse myself back to health. And then I became so addicted to health and learning and figuring this out. So then I went to school and became certified in it all. But the mindset for me was coming out of cancer was I was so stuck in survival mode for years and years and years at this point that it was like, I realized that my mind had to change into one of recovery. And how do you do that? And for me, it was a lot of journaling, and it was understanding that you can be grateful and be upset in the same moment too, right? I'm grateful to be alive. I'm grateful that I'm here, but I'm also pissed that there's no one here around me to help. No one's checking in on cancer survivors. No one's saying, how's it going? And also, you're not processing when you're in that fight or flight mode. So it's almost like the further away you get from treatments for people who are going through conventional treatments, the more your body has time to relax and calm down, and the more the trauma comes up and the processing starts to happen. So it's this key time where it's like, okay, you're done with treatments, but now you have to deal with what those treatments did to your body, to your mindset, to everything. You have to deal with the trauma of the diagnosis. So there's an entire processing piece of it that happens when your body starts to calm down and get into that parasympathetic state. So with that comes a lot of the mindset shift. So I guess that was a long-winded answer, but that's how my mindset changed from every stage. And now where I'm at is, everything that I can do and control, I'm going to do that. That is the preventative piece for me to prevent a reoccurrence. But also now I have 2 little human beings that are looking up to me and teaching them, this is how you read a food label. This is why we're not having this type of food. How does that sugar make you feel? How do these eggs make you feel? Yeah. This is a broccoli sprout. The education piece of it, it's like, you're the new generation and you need to know better because now I know better.
I love that. I don't know if you want to jump in there, Keith, but I have a lot to say there, but go, you want to jump in?
Oh, it's great. I love that. Even about that last statement about the next generation, and so we've made too many wrong choices previous generation, and big companies have been taking over things, and we aren't thinking through the process of how we fix the food, what food we're going to eat, and we want it fast. We went through the microwave society, and now it's the fast food society, and we've just made too many, changes and wrong decisions, and not thinking, and that's from our parents, and we just kept handing that down the past, two generations before me, and now it's important, to share that, with the young people, and it's so important. So I love your insight.
As parents, we have to be educators. I mean, my household is health fanatics. My 18-year-old daughter is a health fanatic. She works out 6 days a week, makes her own food. My son's 16, exact same thing. They cook for themselves. They take their supplements. My son every morning, he's got his turmeric, and he's got his fish oils, and he's 16. But I've instilled that for them from a very young age. Even prior to cancer, I was always fitness, health, sports. Now, as a family, all four of us are going to the gym together. We all work out together. And I think that is very important. As parents, it's our job to educate and teach our children and correct the path that was kind of broken from the past. And I don't think it's people's fault. I think if you're uneducated and you are, as a human, going to trust what we visually see, whether it's commercials, whether it's big box companies, we're just going to trust. We're going to trust labels. When I was 15, 16, 17, I thought I was a health fanatic. I was an athlete. I was working out every day, and I was buying everything fat-free. I was buying, now that I go back and I think of, I was putting those little yellow, we talk about this, Keith, all the time, the little yellow packages of aspartame and pink packages and everything.
Crystal Light.
Yeah, because in my head, I was healthy.
Right.
Now, the chemicals I probably put in my body between the age of 12 and 20 was insane. So I think as people, it's so important for individuals like ourselves, especially individuals like yourself, Michelle and Keith, that are spreading knowledge to individuals, because with social media now, we have the platform. Mm-hmm. And I think it's so important that the generation prior to us didn't have that platform. They just put on the TV and see a commercial of somebody running down the street and eating a bowl of Kellogg's and being like, "I'm healthy. I'm not going to have a heart attack." So I think it's so important that we keep educating people, and it's a domino effect. One person at a time. One person at a time is going to learn, and they're going to see the benefits, and they're going to pass it on, and it starts spreading. And that's the only survivability of this all is really educating as many people as we possibly can, because oh man, the rate of cancer increase in North America is insane. Colorectal cancer, which what I had, I mean, I think it's up 63% in people under 50. It's the number one killer in males right now of all cancers. It's crazy that you're seeing people that quote unquote are healthy are getting diagnosed with colorectal cancer. And it's just years and years of processed shit and stress and environment and people not understanding that. And when they get diagnosed, is not having the education to really focus on the root cause, finding out what happened. That was one thing I did. And I think that's so important. You talked about, Michelle, is what you work with your clients is I literally, and I did this by myself, I literally sat there and I wrote down everything that happened to me over the last 15, 20 years prior. And I tried to kind of figure out what led to this path. Was it me I went on a carnivore diet, and I thought I was healthy, and there's nothing probably wrong with carnivore diets if you do it right. I was eating 12 hot dogs a day sometimes because I thought I'd rather get protein in instead of eating carbs. And I was shredded. I looked incredible, but I was also I would be driving. I got a 3-hour drive, and I stop at a gas station. I need protein. Let's have some pepperoni sticks. There's a lot of things that I could go back on and slap myself and be like, what the F and hell was I doing? But you'll learn. So now I'm able to educate people. And I think that's so important with your story and Keith's experience to educate people and teach people and spread the knowledge, because that's all we could do right now is to try to teach as many people as we can to stop, or you're never going to stop it, slow the process down.
And we're so manipulated. We're so manipulated by all the marketing out there. And it's just like, it's not our fault. It truly is. People, we try to pinpoint like why our cancer diagnosis happened and this and that. And then realize it's not our fault, because sometimes you just don't know. And there's so many things being thrown at us, so many advertisements, so much marketing being thrown at us that it is so hard to resist. And now when, food chemicals and food like products are added to everything we're eating that make things way more addictive and this and that. It's out of control, and it gives us, we're fighting an uphill battle, and I think that's why education is so important for our kids, for the next generation, but for also the generation we're in now, because those cancer rates are insane. They're insane. And I refuse to, me personally, like, I don't want my kids to have to deal with what I had to go through and the trauma of taking care of my mom. Like, I want to change that narrative a little bit. And at least for me, 7 years ago, when I was recovering from cancer, there was no beacon of hope. That, Instagram just started.
Yeah.
There was no one talking about cancer recovery. Like, there was no information out there. And I thought, this is crazy. We need to talk about these things. Like, if I'm feeling like this at 32 years old, there's a million other people. Like, who hasn't been touched by cancer at this point?
Yeah.
Why aren't we talking about this? Why aren't we making it more regular that the cancer journey begins when the bell rings? Why aren't we normalizing it's okay to have anxiety? It's okay to have an identity loss after you've gone through trauma and cancer. It's okay to reboot your life. Let trauma change you. Let cancer change you. Let it turn you into a better person. We all have this unique opportunity after cancer. I always tell people this. I really felt like coming out of cancer, I had a unique opportunity to rebuild my body.
Yeah.
Great. Chemo came in and destroyed everything, right? It is what it is. It's the decision that I made. It saved my life. But now I can do better, and I have to rebuild it. And there wasn't any tools to help me rebuild it. So that's kind of like where I try to help people. Like, here are the tools to begin to rebuild, and not shaming and blaming, but understanding how to go to the grocery store, how to unlearn the bad habits that are so cemented in our brain from childhood, right? And everyone has, food stuff, like food from growing up as kids. Oh, it tastes so good. Or you have it in your mindset, I can't give that up or I'll be so deprived. And it's like, it's coming down to our life depends on it, right? And understanding you can still have the things that make you feel good. You can still have a balance, but 80 to 90% of what you are doing on the day to day is really deciding your future. And the best part about that is we have control over that piece. We have control over what we buy. We have control over what we consume on social media and on the news and this and that. Like, we get to choose those things. And it's hard because I think it's really easy to be on autopilot. It's easier to go back to the bad habit. It's easier just to pick up the Gatorade. It's harder to say, how do I change this habit? Where do I start? People get very stuck in that. And that's where health coaches come in. And that's where, I think that I can really help people and flex a little bit and say, I know how to build those small habits into your daily life. Let's change it. Let's rebuild your body so you can be excited about your future. Cancer has stolen so much from so many people. And at least for me, it stole my past, and it stole my present moment going through it. Like, I refuse to let it steal my future. And when we can make changes like that, it's just, as you know, Jeff, especially, like, it's a game changer when you can change your life around it and really find a good, healthy balance. I think it's just so important.
Yes. So, Michelle, you give some great tips on social media, and so how do people find your social media and get in contact with you? You mind sharing?
Yeah, for sure. So you can find me at revival.health.wellness. I also have a website, revivalhealthwellness.com. And gosh, you can shoot me an email. You can access my email through my website or through Instagram. You can shoot me a DM as well. My website has a great amount of information about different coaching programs I do for cancer survivors and for cancer preventers. Follow me on social media. I give away free educational advice all the time about just small, easy ways that you could start today, improving your life and living more of a preventative lifestyle. So those are probably the two best places that you can find me. And I respond to almost every DM. So, I'm here to help. I enjoy it. I feel like, cancer gave me this purpose. This is my purpose. Out of all the pain, really for me came such a big purpose. And that really is revolving around cancer recovery and prevention, and being, a coach in that space. So I just feel grateful to be here and so honored to talk with you guys, but also to help as many people as possible and spread the right information.
And
Yes.
I'm going to leave it on one note, and then I'll let you guys finish off. Is one thing I mentioned and Michelle mentioned is cancer has 0 age on there right now. I mean, the amount of young people getting cancer, getting diagnosed in their 30s and 40s. And growing up, you'd always hear cancer as something that would happen to somebody in their later stages of life. That's not happening anymore. So trust your body, trust your intuitions. Regularly check your body. If you're a female, male, when you're in the shower, feel your body. Make sure there's no lumps. If you're not feeling right, like trust it. Question things. Don't over analyze things, but question things. There's no issues with questioning things and ask questions. And preventative action is the most important. I mean, take care of your health. I mean, we say this all the time. And I used to say this I used to talk about this 10 years ago when I would coach entrepreneurs. I'd be like, you could have the Porsche or you could have the Ferrari in the driveway. If you're in the hospital, it means absolutely nothing. Health is wealth. You need to focus on your health. You might have nothing now, which is great. Let's keep that for the rest of your life, having nothing. So focus on your health before you're in a situation when you have no choice. So start early, get on it, and take care of yourself. And I'll leave it to Keith and Michelle to finish off here.
Yes. So Michelle, it's been a pleasure. Matter of fact, it's a shame that we'll wrap it in this in a little bit.
I know.
It's been great. I've enjoyed this so much, and I enjoy your channel, the information you provide, and with like 2 or 3 tidbits every single time you have a post. It's just wonderful. So I thank you very much for being here with us and for this recording.
Thank you. I'm such a huge fan of yours, Keith, too. So, I feel very honored to be here, and thank you so much for spreading all the information that you both are spreading too, and just, bringing all of these important topics to light. It's incredibly important. Health is wealth. And it's a good time right now. I think the shift is happening, and I can feel it happening, and I feel so honored to be a part of it. And the only thing I would like to say to people out there, whether you're, completely healthy or you're recovering or you've just been diagnosed, don't underestimate the power of small changes.
Yeah.
And what just one small shift or swap could be, it could completely change your cells, your body, your health. Like, I know sometimes it doesn't feel like making one swap from plastic to glass or your personal care products is going to really make a difference, but I promise you it does. And it just takes one to get the motivation and that rhythm going to keep moving forward with it. So just, a small step really goes a long way. And don't get overwhelmed by all the information out there. And if you ever have questions, I'm always here.
One thing Michelle said prior was you want your health to be, I don't know the exact words you said, but you want your health to be something where it's a routine. You don't think about it anymore. It's just part of
autopilot. You want to autopilot your health.
So even if you don't want to overwhelm yourself, and exactly what Michelle said, is that I always say the domino effect is one domino at a time, and before you know, you got the full momentum. It's doing one change, whether you're changing plastic to glass, whether you buy stainless steel and you stop using water bottles. One change, and then you make another change, and another week or 2 weeks you make another change. You go for the 15-minute walk. It's those small changes, and they become habits. And we're humans. I mean, we're creatures of habit. And once it becomes a habit, it becomes instilled in you, and you're not going to think about it anymore. So I love that you said that, and I think it's so important to make those changes and let it become a habit and part of our DNA every day.
And once you start feeling good, it makes you want to keep doing more things. Like, 100%. Oh man, like I didn't think that was going to make me feel this good. Or wow, that extra hour of sleep I really feel different. Like, what else can I do next? Like, it really is exciting. It starts this whole next chapter for you. And when you start getting excited about it, then you talk to other people about it. Then they're like, you're crazy, or okay, I'm going to try it. Right. Or then your kids see it, or your wife sees it, or someone else. You start to influence people around you because you start to feel good, and it radiates you in such a different way. And that's how we can get that community started and those conversations starting, is super small steps.
Yeah, I love it. This is awesome. I appreciate you, Michelle. I appreciate Keith every week. And thank you guys.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.